A red wool coat against a white mountain. From above, she's a single drop of blood in a sea of snow, dragging a leather trunk behind her like a corpse she cannot bury. Closer now, the pines lean in. Her boots have stopped feeling like boots. Her left hand has stopped answering. Somewhere behind her, 4 miles back, a wagon driver turned his horse and rode away without looking. Closer still, a face 22 years old, lips the color of winter, lashes catching ice. The kind of pretty a man would walk past a window twice to see again. The kind of pretty that gets a girl sent up a mountain to die. 3 feet from her face, a drop of blood on the snow, not hers. Another drop, another. A trail leading off through the trees towards something that is bleeding harder than she is, something larger, something a long way from done. She rises, she follows. The wind did not howl that afternoon, it screamed. Cora Pendleton learned the difference between the two, somewhere between the 3rd and 4th mile of walking. Howling was what wind did in Boston against the windows of brick houses, polite and contained. Screaming was what wind did in Colorado against a girl in a red wool coat with no one to hear her. Her boots had stopped feeling like boots 2 miles back. Now they felt like wooden boxes nailed to the ends of her legs. The leather trunk dragging behind her on its frozen tether had stopped feeling like a trunk. It felt like a body, something dead she could not put down. 4 days. 4 days without a proper meal. She had counted them on her fingers inside her glove. Tuesday in the dining car or the train, a bowl of stew and a piece of bread. Wednesday, a hard biscuit and coffee at the Denver station. Thursday, nothing but melted snow. Friday, nothing at all. Today was Saturday. The light was already going. Out here, the light went fast. Not like Boston, where sundown took its time and gave a person a chance to find a street lamp. Out here, the sun fell behind a mountain, and the world simply stopped being a world. She kept walking, because what else was there to do? Her left hand had stopped responding 20 minutes ago. The fingers were still there. She could see them through the wool. They simply no longer answered when she asked them to close. She switched the trunk rope to her right hand. The right one still worked, for now. In the trunk was a stethoscope, a roll of suturing thread, a bone saw, a small bottle of carbolic acid, a stoppered vial of morphine, a tin of clean linen, a worn copy of Gray's Anatomy, with her mother's handwriting in the margins, and one folded letter from a man named Holt Whitmore, who the bride catalog had promised would meet her at the Silver Hollow rail station on the 1st of December. It was the 1st of December. No one had met her. The station agent at Silver Hollow had looked at her the way a man looks at a glass of milk he suspects is turned. Pendleton, you say, going up to Black Pine, going up to the Whitmore place. He had not finished the sentence. He had only let his mouth hang half open and look past her shoulder at something that was not there. The boarding house woman had been worse. She had not looked past Cora. She had looked right into her. Honey, the woman had said, honey, listen to me. They sent another girl up there 2 winters back. Pretty thing. 20 years old. Brown hair. We never saw her come down. They say the 3 brothers buried her behind the cabin. They say at night you can hear her singing through the pines. Cora had asked what the girl's name was. The boarding house woman had said Lenora. And then she had said, child, please do not get on that wagon. But Cora had gotten on the wagon because there was no train going back. Because back was a stepfather named Reginald Marsh, who had already accepted $300 from a 60-year-old liquor merchant for her hand. Because back was a Boston townhouse with the doors locked from the outside. Because back was a wedding gown laid out on her bed like a shroud. Forward was a stranger. Forward was at least a stranger. The wagon driver had taken her 2 miles up the mountain pass before he had stopped. The horses climbed down and very politely told her that this was as far as he went. He had pointed at a thin trail. He had said the cabin was 4 miles up. He had said, good luck, miss. Then he had turned the wagon and gone back down the mountain and left her standing in the snow with a leather trunk and a folded letter. That had been 3 hours ago, or 4. The light was almost gone now, and she could no longer tell. The trail had given out somewhere. The pines had closed in. The snow had risen from her ankles to her shins to her knees. The trunk dragged behind her like an anchor. She had taken to talking to it. Come on, then. Up we go. There's a girl. As if the trunk were a stubborn child. As if she had any business calling anyone else stubborn. She fell. Not dramatically. Just a small giving way of her right knee, a soft pitch forward, and then her face in the snow. The cold pressed against her cheek the way a cold hand presses against a fevered forehead. It felt almost kind. So this is how it happened, she thought. Quiet little thought, like noting the weather. So this is how a girl from Boston dies on a mountain. She did not move for a long time. She was not sure how long. She heard the wind. She heard her own breath. She heard her heart slower now than it should have been doing its tired work somewhere in her chest. And then she saw it, 3 feet from her face, bright against the white, a drop of blood. She blinked. Another drop, and another. A trail of them leading off through the trees. Not deer. The drops were too large. Deer bled in fine sprays when wounded. This was a man. This was a person walking or being dragged and bleeding from something high. Chest or shoulder, her right hand twitched. Her training answered before her body did. It happened that way at Mass General sometimes. A patient came through the doors with an artery cut, and Cora's hands were already moving before her mind had named the injury. 2 years on a surgical ward did that to a person. The hands learned to wake up first. She pushed herself up to her elbows, then her knees, then her feet, then her... Because someone was bleeding. Because someone was bleeding, and she was the only person on this mountain who knew what to do about it. Because if she was going to die out here, she would at least die walking towards something instead of falling away from it. She left the trunk where it lay. She followed the blood. The trail wound between the pines and then opened into a small clearing, and the clearing opened onto a site that Cora's mind would not at first agree to organize. A cabin, but not a cabin. A house. 3 stories of dark timber rising up against the slope of the mountain, a stone chimney pouring smoke, the windows lit warm and yellow against the dusk. A porch wide enough to dance on. A pair of carriage horses tied to a rail blowing steam through their nostrils. This was not a trapper's shack. This was the home of men with money. And 10 feet from the porch steps, face down in the snow, lay a man. He was enormous. Even from this distance, she could see that. A buffalo hide coat spread out around him like a fallen tent. One arm flung up, one leg twisted under. The back of his coat was black with wet. The snow around him was red. A second man was on his knees beside him, pressing both palms against the wound, swearing in a steady, low voice. A third man stood at the top of the porch steps with a Winchester rifle scanning the tree line. The third man saw her first. The Winchester came up. Cora stopped. She had perhaps 30 feet between her and the rifle. The man on the steps was tall, lean, dark-haired under a brown hat, and the rifle in his hands did not waver. His eyes did not waver either. They held her the way a hawk's eyes hold a rabbit, calm, unblinking, already deciding. "Don't move," he said. His voice carried over the wind without seeming to have to try. Cora did not move. "Who sent you?" he said. "Nobody." Cora said, "Try again. My name is Cora Pendleton." "Mean nothing to me. I'm the bride." The man on the porch said nothing. His face did not change. The second man kneeling in the snow did not look up. He pressed harder against the wound. His shoulders were shaking. "The bride," the man on the porch said. "The male bride," Cora said. "The letter. Holt Whitmore. I have a letter from a Holt Whitmore. He was supposed to meet me at the station. Nobody met me. I walked. She could not finish. The wind took the rest of her sentence. The kneeling man finally looked up. He was younger than the one with the rifle, softer in the face, dark hair falling into his eyes, blood up to his elbows. His mouth was open slightly as if he had been about to say something, and then he had seen her, and then he had forgotten what. He's dying, the younger man said. He was not talking to Cora. He was talking to the man with the Winchester. Briggs, he's dying. He's not stopping. He needs. The man with the rifle. Briggs did not move the rifle. Briggs, the younger one, said. His voice broke on the word. And then to Cora, the younger one said, "Are you really a nurse?" 2 years, Cora said. Mass General, surgical ward. Briggs. The rifle did not move. Briggs, for God's sake, he is going to die in the snow. Slowly. Briggs lowered the rifle, not all the way, halfway. The barrel pointed now at the porch boards. His eyes did not leave Cora. "You come up here," Briggs said. "You touch him. You save him. If he dies on your hands, I put you in the ground next to him." "We clear?" "Yes," Cora said. "Are we clear?" he said again, slower. "We are clear," Cora said. She ran, or what running becomes when a person has not eaten in 4 days and is wading through snow up to her knees. A staggering, a falling forward with intent. She reached them. She dropped down beside the younger man. She did not introduce herself again. She did not have time. "Move your hands," she said. He moved them. The wound was high on the left side of the back, just under the shoulder blade. Through and through. The bullet had gone in the front and come out the back, which was the only piece of good news available to them at this exact moment. A through and through bleeds from 2 places, but it does not leave lead inside the body. She would not need the forceps. Not today. Not on the snow. She pressed her own bare hands against the exit wound. The cold hit her palms. The blood was warm. "Get him inside," she said. The younger man did not move. Now, she said, he moved. He was strong, stronger than he looked. He got his hands under the wounded man's arms. Briggs was suddenly there too, off the porch, the rifle slung. Together, the two of them lifted the body. Cora kept her hands clamped over the back wound as they dragged him up the porch steps into the warmth, into a great wide room with a roaring stone hearth and a long oak dining table and a bear pelt thrown across a leather couch. "Put him on the table," Cora said. The younger one looked at her like she had spoken in Greek. "The table," she said again. "The dining table. Clear it, now," Tate Briggs said. "Do it, Tate." So the younger one was Tate. Tate swept his arm across the long oak table and sent a pewter candle holder and 3 china cups crashing to the floor. Cora did not flinch at the sound. She had her hands inside another human being, and she did not have flinches to spare. They laid him out, face down. Briggs cut the coat away with a hunting knife in 3 long strokes. The shirt underneath was a single black sheet of wet. Cora pulled it apart at the seam. "Boiling water," she said, "as hot as you can stand to carry it. A clean cloth, the cleanest you have. Whiskey, any spirit, strongest you have." Tate looked at her. "Go," she said. Tate went. Briggs stayed. Briggs stood at the head of the table looking down at the man on it, and his face did something she had not seen it do before. It cracked. Just a hairline? Around the mouth, around the eyes. He reached down and put his hand on the wounded man's hair, almost gently, and he said one word. "Holt." So the man on the table was Holt Whitmore. So the man on the table was her husband. Or the man who was supposed to be her husband. Or the man who had written her a letter. She did not have time to think about that. Tate came back with a kettle and a tin basin and a stack of linen towels and a bottle of high-proof rye. He set them on a side table. Cora dunked her hands in the basin to clean them. The water scalded. She did not flinch at that either. She poured the rye over the wound. Holt's body convulsed. A sound came out of him. Not a scream. Something deeper than a scream. The sound of a large animal trying to die quietly. "Hold him," Cora said. Tate held him. Briggs held him. She worked. She did not remember most of what she did afterward. People who have asked her about it in later years got nothing useful. She had threaded a needle. She had stitched torn muscle. She had packed the wound with clean linen, soaked in carbolic acid that Tate had run to fetch from her trunk when she had told him where it was. She had done what 2 years on the surgical ward had taught her hands to do, and her hands had done it without consulting her mind, which was a small mercy because her mind was nowhere useful. When she was finished, it was full dark outside. She tied the last knot. She straightened up. Her vision tipped sideways. She put one hand on the table to keep from falling. How long, Briggs said. How long for what she said? For us to know. She looked at the man on the table. She looked at the color of his lips. She looked at the steadiness of his breath, which was shallow but regular. She looked at the bandages. She looked at the candle. He's young, she said. He's strong. The bullet missed the lung. If he survives the next 12 hours without fever, he'll survive the next 12 weeks. And if he doesn't? Then he doesn't, Cora said. She had not meant to say it like that. So flat, so tired, but there was no other way to say it that would not have been a lie, and she was too tired to lie. Briggs looked at her. For the first time, he looked at her the way a man looks at a person, and not the way a man looks at an intruder. Then her knees stopped working. She did not remember the floor coming up to meet her. She only remembered Tate somehow already there catching her under the arms before she folded. Briggs swearing. The smell of pine smoke and leather and rye on Tate's coat. The ceiling beams above her dark wood with iron lanterns hanging. And then, nothing. For 3 days, nothing. She rose into the world in pieces. A spoon at her lips. Broth. Salt and beef and onion. A hand under her head. Cool cloth on her forehead. A voice low and close reading. She caught one line. The voice was reading Whitman. I am the mate and companion of people all just as immortal and fathomless as myself. The voice was rough but careful around the words. As if the voice had read them many times, then darkness again. Then daylight. A different voice this time, sharper, closer to her ear. Don't you dare die on me, Boston. We didn't drag you in from the snow to bury you in spring. Then darkness, then the smell of something baking. Bread, real bread. She had not smelled real bread since Wednesday morning at the Denver station. Her stomach turned over inside her like an animal waking up. She opened her eyes. The room was not the great hall of the night before. This was a bedroom, small, low-ceilinged, with a single window glazed in frost, a fire and a smaller stone hearth, a four-poster bed with a quilt that smelled of cedar and wool, a nightstand with a pitcher of water and a tin cup, a chair beside the bed. Tate was in the chair. He was asleep. His head was tipped back against the wall. A book lay open on his chest. The book was the Whitman. The book had a finger of fresh blood on the spine. His own finger was wrapped in a strip of linen. He had cut himself on something and not bothered to bandage it properly. Cora watched him sleep. He was younger than she had first thought in the dark. 27, long jaw with 3 days of stubble, long lashes, a nose that had been broken once and reset by a person who was not a doctor. His hands were enormous. His hands were also clean. He had washed them. He had washed them carefully. Whoever this man was, this Tate, he had sat by her bed for hours or days. And before he had touched a sick woman with his hands, he had washed them. Her eyes filled. She did not know why. She had not cried in 8 years. Not since the night they had come to the orphanage door to tell her about the hospital fire. She had decided that night that she would not cry again, and she had kept that promise to herself for 8 years, and now she was lying in a stranger's bed, crying because a man had washed his hands. Tate stirred, his eyes open. For a moment, he did not seem to know where he was. Then he saw her. Then he saw her face. Then he saw the wet on her face. He sat up so fast the book slid off his chest and thumped to the floor. Are you in pain? He said. No. Are you cold? No. Then, I don't know, Cora said. He looked at her for a long second. Then he did something Cora had not expected. He stood up. He went to the door. He opened it. He shouted down the hall, "Briggs, she's awake!" A pause. Footsteps. Boots on wood. A long stride fast. Briggs filled the doorway. Out of his hat now. Out of his coat. In a clean wool shirt rolled to the elbows. His arms were corded with muscle and old scars. He looked at her. He looked at Tate. He looked at her again. 3 days, he said. "I'm sorry," Cora said. "Automatically." "Don't be sorry," Briggs said. "Same automatic." "Where is?" Cora started. "Holt's alive," Briggs said. "Fever broke yesterday. He's awake. He's not sitting up, but he's awake." Cora closed her eyes. She did not know it was relief until it landed. Briggs sat down on the edge of the bed, not too close. He sat the way an older brother sits next to a sister who has been sick, hands on his knees, back straight, not looking right at her. "You saved his life," he said. "I don't know if—" "You saved his life," he said again. "Don't argue with me about it. I was there." She did not argue. She closed her eyes. She opened them. "Where am I?" she said. "The Whitmore place," Briggs said. "Black Pine Ridge, about 4 miles up the mountain from where my brother Tate found you. Or rather, where you found him. He says you were already moving toward Holt when he saw you." "I saw the blood," Cora said. "I know. I followed it." "I know." He paused. He passed a hand across his jaw. The whiskers caught the light. He looked older when he did that. Older than Tate by 2 years, maybe 29, 30 at the outside. He said, "Miss Pendleton." "Cora," she said. "Just Cora." "Cora." Briggs nodded. "Cora, I need to tell you something, and I do not know how to say it nicely, so I am going to say it without nice. Are you ready?" "I'm ready." Holt did not write that letter. The room got very quiet. The fire popped. Tate, still standing in the doorway, did not move. "I'm sorry," Cora said. "I don't." "He did not write the letter you got," Briggs said. "He did not put a bride advertisement in the Boston Herald. He did not pay any money to any catalog. He has never written to a woman in his life. Not since our mother. He didn't write you, Cora. But the letter." "Somebody wrote you the letter," Briggs said. "Somebody who knew you were in Boston. Somebody who wanted you on a train to Silver Hollow. Somebody who wanted you walking up this mountain in a blizzard." Cora's breath went out of her in a way she did not feel. Tate said, "Briggs." Tate Briggs said, "She needs to know, but not. She needs to know now, before she gets back on her feet, before she thanks us for the room." "Cora, listen to me. You were not invited here. You were sent here. Somebody sent you. We do not yet know who. But 2 years ago, another girl was sent here the same way. Same advertisement. Same false letter. She came up this mountain just like you did. We took her in. We fed her. We trusted her. She tried to poison the 3 of us in our sleep 11 months later. Her name was Lenora. She is buried behind this house. We did not put her there because we wanted to. We put her there because she put herself there. She drank the poison before we could stop her once she knew we had figured it out. That is the truth. The town will tell you we killed her. We did not." Cora could not speak. Briggs went on. His voice did not rise. His voice did not slow down. He had clearly been rehearsing this speech for 3 days while she slept. "I do not know who you are," Briggs said. "I do not know who sent you. I do not know if you are a poison girl or an innocent girl or a girl who does not know what she has been sent into. I do not need to know yet. What I need to tell you is this. You saved my brother's life with your own 2 hands. That is a debt that cannot be undone. So this is what we are going to do. You are going to stay in this room until you are strong enough to walk. We are going to feed you. We are going to keep you warm. We are not going to ask you anything you do not want to tell us. And when you are well, you can leave. We will take you to the station ourselves. We will pay your fare back to Boston or anywhere else you would like to go. No conditions, no price." He paused. He looked at her for the first time since he had started talking. "The choice," he said, "will always be yours. While you are under this roof, no man in this house touches you, speaks roughly to you, or asks anything of you that you have not freely offered. Do you understand me?" She understood him. She could not speak. She nodded. Briggs nodded back. "Tate," he said, "bring her soup." He stood up. He left the room. His boots faded down the hall. Tate stayed. He came and sat in the chair again. He did not pick up the book. He looked at her hands on the quilt. "Your fingers are getting their color back," he said. Cora looked at her own hands. They were. The blue was draining out of them. The pink was coming up underneath. Slow, but coming. "I'm going to live," she said, to no one in particular. "You're going to live," Tate said. He said it the way a man states a fact, not the way a man makes a promise. There was a difference. She closed her eyes. She slept again. When she woke the second time, the light through the window was different. Late afternoon, slanted, gold. The fire had been built up. The chair by her bed was empty. On the nightstand were a bowl of broth, a piece of fresh bread, and a folded square of paper. She unfolded the paper. It was the bride advertisement from the Boston Herald. Yellowed at the edges, cut out clean. Tate had clipped it himself by the look of the scissor work. Wife wanted. Sound, healthy Christian woman of marriageable age to share home and life of established gentleman of means in Colorado Mountain Territory. Mining claim comfortable house, no children. Discretion guaranteed. Address, inquiries to Mr. Holt Whitmore, care of Silver Hollow Post Office, Colorado. She read it twice. She read the address line a third time, care of Silver Hollow Post Office. The post office in Silver Hollow was run, the boarding house woman had mentioned in passing, by a man named Dr. Ambrose Thackeray, who was also the town's physician, who was also the town's banker, who was also the boarding house woman, had said, drawing in a breath, "Careful what you say about him. Dear, he hears things. He hears everything." Cora put the paper down. She picked the paper up again. She looked at the date stamp at the bottom of the cutting. October 14th, 8 weeks ago. 8 weeks. That was 3 days after her stepfather, Reginald Marsh, had taken the $300 from the liquor merchant. 3 days after her wedding date had been set. 3 days after she had begun to plan her escape. 3 days. Whoever had placed the advertisement had not placed it for a stranger. They had placed it for her. They had known she was about to run. They had known she would look. They had known she would write to the address. They had been waiting for her. She put the paper down a second time. She did not pick it up again. She lay back in the bed. She looked at the dark beams of the ceiling. She listened to the fire. Somewhere in the house, very faintly, she heard a man's voice. Reading, reading aloud, reading Whitman. "I am the mate and companion of people all just as immortal and fathomless as myself." It was Tate's voice. He was reading to Holt. Cora closed her eyes and she did not sleep. She thought. 2 days later, she was strong enough to sit up. 3 days after that, she was strong enough to walk to the window. 5 days after that, she stood in the front parlor of the Whitmore house in a clean dress that Tate had set out for her, a dress that had belonged to no one in this house, that Briggs had ridden into town and bought new for her without telling her he was going to do it, and she met Holt Whitmore properly for the first time. He was sitting up in a high-backed chair near the fire. His shoulder was wrapped. His face was pale. His left arm was in a sling. He was tall, even seated. His hair was dark. His eyes were the color of whiskey held up to candlelight. He looked at her. She looked at him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then he said, "Briggs told you." "Yes," Cora said. "About the letter, yes. About Lenora, yes." Holt nodded once, slowly, as if checking that his neck still worked. "I would like to know your name," he said. "From your own mouth, not from my brother's." "Cora Pendleton. Where are you from?" "Cora Pendleton." "Boston," Cora said. "South End, 63 Adams Street. My mother was Margaret Pendleton. My father was William Pendleton. He was a doctor. She was a nurse. They both died 8 years ago in a hospital fire when I was 14 years old. I was raised by my mother's half-brother. His name is Reginald Marsh. He gambles. He sold me to a liquor merchant for $300 2 months ago. I ran. I answered a bride advertisement. I came west. I arrived on the 1st of December and walked 4 miles up a mountain in a blizzard. I found you bleeding in the snow. I am 22 years old. I am a trained nurse. I am not a poison girl. I am not anyone's spy. I do not know who sent that letter to me. I want to know. Her voice did not shake. She had not planned to say it that way. The words had simply lined up while she had been walking from the bedroom to the parlor, and now they had come out in their order. Holt looked at Hiram. He looked at her for a long time. His face did something complicated. Margaret Pendleton, he said. Cora's head came up. Was she from Boston originally, he said. Yes, Cora said. Did she ever work at Massachusetts General Hospital as a nurse from 1853 to 1857? Cora's mouth opened. She did? Cora said, before she married my father. How do you... Oh. Holt looked at the fire. He looked at the fire for so long that Cora began to think he had forgotten she was in the room. Then he said quietly, my mother was Adelaide Whitmore. She was a nurse at Massachusetts General Hospital from 1853 to 1856. She married my father, Elias Whitmore, in the spring of 56. We came west in 75. She was murdered in this house in 78, along with my father. I was 21 years old. The room was very still. In her mother's leather trunk, sitting now in the corner of the bedroom upstairs, there was a packet of letters Cora had never read. Letters with no return address. Letters her mother had kept tied together with a black silk ribbon. Cora had opened the trunk 1,000 times to take out the stethoscope and the suturing thread. She had never untied the ribbon. She had told herself that she would do it when she was older. She was older now, I think Cora said. I think my mother knew your mother. Holt looked up from the fire. I think so too, he said. Briggs, standing silently by the parlor doorway, said, Jesus Christ. Tate, sitting on the stairs, said nothing at all. He was looking at Cora the way a man looks at the last piece of a puzzle he did not know he was holding. Outside the window, far down the slope of Black Pine Ridge, the sun was setting over Silver Hollow. The lights of the town were coming on one by one. Above the post office, above the bank, above the office of Dr. Ambrose Thackeray, who had not yet been told that the girl he had sent up the mountain to die was alive, was speaking, was named, was here. A lantern moved on the trail below the cabin. Not close. Half a mile down. A single lantern swinging in the hand of a single rider coming up. Briggs saw it first. He went to the window without a word. He stood there a long moment. Then he said in a voice flat as Riverstone, Tate, go get the Winchester. The lantern came up the mountain at a walk. Not a gallop, not a trot, a walk, which was worse. Because a man in a hurry was a man with bad news. And a man at a walk was a man with worse news. A man at a walk was a man who knew he was going to get what he came for and saw no reason to rush. Briggs stood at the window with his hand flat on the glass. Don't move from there, he said, without turning around. Cora did not move. Tate came back into the parlor with the Winchester. He moved differently now. He moved the way Briggs moved. The Tate who had read Whitman by her bedside was gone. This Tate had a rifle in his hands, and his shoulders had dropped 2 inches the way a man's shoulders drop when he is about to do something he does not want to do. He looked at Holt in the chair. Holt looked back at him. Holt said one word, door. Tate moved to the door. Briggs stayed at the window. The lantern was 300 yards away now, and Cora could see the rider clearly. A small man on a tall mule. A scarf wound around the lower half of his face. A leather satchel across his back. A second satchel hung at his side, heavier the way a satchel hangs when there are bottles inside. Tate, Briggs said, it's Ezekiel. Tate did not lower the rifle. Ezekiel was Briggs's name for the town pharmacist. A man Cora had not yet met but had heard mentioned twice already that week, both times the way you mention a tooth that has been bothering you for years. Briggs said the name without venom, but without warmth. He is the postman, Tate said. He is also the eyes of Dr. Ambrose Thackeray, Briggs said. Anything he sees up here Thackeray will know by breakfast. Tate, stay back. Don't show the rifle. Don't show your face yet. Cora, she turned. Sit down. By the fire. Pick up a book. Don't look at the door. But sit down. Pick up a book. Because the boarding house woman had been right. Because Thackeray heard everything. Because if Ezekiel saw a Boston girl in the parlor of the Whitmore house, alive, healthy, wearing a clean dress, then the man at the bottom of the mountain who had sent that letter would learn before noon tomorrow that his plan had not killed her. And then he would send someone else. Cora sat down by the fire. She picked up a book. The book was a leather-bound volume of essays by Emerson. She opened it to the middle and held it as if she had been reading it for an hour. She did not turn the page. Hooves on the porch, boots on the porch, a knock, 3 light raps, polite. The way a man knocks who wants to be remembered as polite. Tate opened the door. Evening, said a voice from the porch. Evening, Ezekiel, Tate said. Out of breath up that pass, the voice said. The voice was thin and pleasant, the way a paper bag is thin and pleasant. Mule about gave up on me at the switchback. I'm sure she'll forgive you, Tate said. You got mail? I'll take it. Got a wire, too. I'll take that, too. Got a package from Mr. Holt Whitmore. Personal, marked urgent. From Boston. A pause. A long one. Cora did not breathe. Boston, Tate said, slowly. Stamp says Boston. Postmark is 2 weeks old. Caught up with us today. We've been holding it at the post office account of nobody coming down for the mail. Dr. Thackeray said I ought to bring it up myself. Said it might be important. Said he wanted to make sure it got to the right hands. That was kind of him, Tate said. He's a kind man, Ezekiel said. He's something, Tate said. A second pause. Cora could feel Ezekiel's eyes through the doorway. Not on her. Not yet. He had not seen her yet. He was looking at Tate. He was looking at Tate's hands, at the way Tate was standing in the doorway, at the way Tate was not quite letting him see past Tate's shoulder. Briggs around Ezekiel said, he's up at the high pen. One of the mares is foaling. In December. In December. Long winter for that calf. Cold winter for everybody, Tate said. Heard your brother took a fall, Ezekiel said. Did you? Heard he took it pretty bad. He's mending. Glad to hear it. The town's been praying. Tell them to keep praying. I will. Ezekiel coughed. A small dry cough. The way a man coughs when he is about to say the thing he came to say. Tate, he said. Ezekiel. Dr. Thackeray asked me to ask after a young woman. A Miss Pendleton, Boston girl, come in on Saturday's train. Boarding house lady said she'd hired a wagon to come up this way. Doctor's a little worried, account of the storm, account of nobody having seen her since. Tate did not answer. Cora's hand on the book tightened. I haven't seen any Boston girl, Tate said. You haven't. I haven't. Ezekiel was quiet for a moment. That's so, he said. That's so. You sure? Tate said nothing. Cora heard very faintly the sound of leather on leather, the sound a man makes when he shifts his weight on a porch, the sound a man makes when he is thinking. A reason I ask, Ezekiel said, voice still pleasant, still papery, is the boarding house lady was awful certain. She remembers a red wool coat. She remembers a leather trunk. She remembers the girl mentioning the Whitmore claim by name. She remembers because the girl was so pretty, the kind of pretty that sticks. Tate did not answer. The kind of pretty, Ezekiel said, that a man would walk past his window twice to look at again. Tate said, are you finished, Ezekiel? Ezekiel laughed, a small, dry laugh, the way a man laughs when he has already gotten what he came for and wants to make sure you know he has it. I'm finished, he said. You give Mr. Holt my best. I will. You give him this package. Tate took the package. Cora heard the brown paper crinkle, heard a small bottle clink inside. And you have a good evening, Ezekiel said. You too, Ezekiel. The boots went back across the porch. The mule complained. The hooves moved down the steps. The lantern moved off into the dark. Tate closed the door. He set the bolt. He set the second bolt. He stood with his hand on the wood for a long moment with his eyes shut. Briggs left the window. Briggs crossed the parlor in 4 strides and took the package out of Tate's hands. He set it on the side table. He pulled out his hunting knife. He cut the string. "Don't," Holt said. From the chair. Briggs looked up. "Don't open it inside," Holt said. "Take it out to the porch. Open it out there with the long stick." Briggs nodded once. He picked up the package. He carried it back out the door. They heard him on the porch. They heard him on the steps. They heard him walk 20 feet out into the snow. They heard the brown paper tear. A pause. A long one. Then they heard Briggs swear. Not loudly. Quietly. The way a man swears when he has had something confirmed he was hoping not to have confirmed. He came back inside. He set the contents of the package on the side table one at a time. A bottle of laudanum, a bottle of arsenic powder, a polished tin of strychnine pellets used for poisoning wolves, and a small white card, embossed, with one sentence written in dark blue ink in a careful, elegant hand. For the household of Mr. Holt Whitmore, with the compliments and continued goodwill of Dr. Ambrose Thackeray. Recovery aids and pest control. The doctor's care extends in all directions. Cora got up from the chair. She crossed the parlor. She picked up the card. She read it twice. She set it down. She said very quietly, "He is telling you that he knows." Holt said yes. She said, "He is telling you that he sent me here to be a third bottle on this table." Holt said yes. She said, "And he is telling you that since I am still alive, he is willing to do it himself." Holt did not answer. Briggs picked up the bottles. He carried them to the kitchen. They heard the back door open. They heard the bottles smash against the rocks of the kitchen yard one after the other, 3 sharp pops in a row. He came back with empty hands. He sat down on the hearthstone in front of the fire and put his head in his hands, and for the first time since Cora had met him, he looked his age. 29, maybe 30. A man who had been carrying something heavy for a long time and had just been told he was going to have to keep carrying it. Holt looked at her. His eyes did not leave hers. He said, "I have a question for you, and I would like an answer." She nodded. He said, "Do you want to stay?" She did not understand him at first. He saw that she did not understand him. He said it again, slower. He said, "My brother offered to take you back to the station. The offer stands. We will hitch a wagon tomorrow morning. We will pay your fare to anywhere. New York, Philadelphia, San Francisco, Boston. If you want to go back to Boston, although I would not advise it. The offer stands as it stood 3 days ago." He paused. "But now you have seen the card. Now you know what he is. Now you know that you were not sent here by accident. So I am asking you again with that knowledge in front of you, do you want to stay?" The fire popped. Tate had not moved from the door. Cora looked at the 3 men in the room. She looked at Holt with his arm in a sling and the bandage at his shoulder and the long body folded into the leather chair like a knife into a sheath. She looked at Briggs with his head in his hands on the hearthstone. She looked at Tate by the door, his hands still on the bolt, his face white with something that was not fear and not anger, but something quieter than either of them. She thought of the bedroom upstairs. She thought of the leather trunk in the corner of the bedroom. She thought of the packet of letters tied with a black silk ribbon that her mother had kept and never explained, and the ribbon that Cora had never untied, and the day 8 years ago when a man had come to the orphanage door and said there had been a fire, and her mother was not coming for her, and the day 22 years ago when her mother had named her Cora because Margaret Pendleton had once said in a voice Cora barely remembered, Cora was the name of a girl who knew her own mind. She said, "I want to stay." Holt closed his eyes for a second, only a second. Then he opened them again. He said, "Thank you." She said, "But not as a bride. Not yet. Not for any letter that wasn't yours. Not as anyone's wife. If I stay as a guest in this house until I have read what I need to read, and then I decide what I am. Is that understood?" Holt said that is understood. Briggs said into his hands, yes, ma'am. Tate said yes. Cora said, then I am going upstairs. I am going to read my mother's letters tonight, and tomorrow morning we will talk about what to do with the man who sent me here. She walked out of the parlor with the Emerson book still in her hand. She climbed the stairs. She did not look back. The bedroom was warm. The fire had been kept up. The leather trunk sat in the corner where Tate had put it the night Briggs had carried it up the stairs without being asked. She knelt beside it. She lifted the lid. The smell of old leather and her mother's lavender sachet, dry now after 8 years, but still faintly there, rose up. She moved aside the stethoscope. The bone saw the suturing thread. She moved aside the Gray's Anatomy with her mother's handwriting in the margins. Margaret Pendleton in pencil in a hand. Cora knew the way she knew her own face. Watch for the femoral. The femoral kills faster than the carotid. Press hard. Pray harder. She moved aside the bottle of carbolic acid. Underneath, at the very bottom of the trunk, beneath a false board that Cora had not known was a false board until her fingernail caught on it last week while she had been sorting her instruments to pack for the journey, was the packet. She had found the false board on the train. She had not opened the packet. She had told herself she would open it when she was somewhere safe. She supposed, now somewhere safe, or somewhere not less safe than anywhere else, which was the closest approximation to safe a girl in her position was going to get. She lifted out the packet, 20 letters, maybe 25, tied tight with black silk. The paper was yellow. The handwriting on the topmost envelope was not her mother's. The handwriting on the topmost envelope was long and slanted and elegant, and the ink had faded from black to brown. The return address read, Mrs. Adelaide Whitmore, Black Pine Ridge, Colorado Territory. Cora's hands went cold. She turned the packet over. The bottommost letter, the oldest, was postmarked from Boston in 1854. The return address on that one was Miss Adelaide Foss, Cambridge, Massachusetts. The next one up was postmarked 1855. Same Adelaide, different return address. Massachusetts General Hospital, staff residence. The next one was 1856, from a Mrs. Adelaide Whitmore, Boston. The next one was 1860, Black Pine Ridge. They went forward in time, 24 years of letters, from one woman to another, from Cora's mother's best friend. Cora untied the black silk ribbon. She opened the topmost letter, the most recent one, with hands that did not feel like her hands. It was dated June 14th, 1878, 4 months before Adelaide Whitmore was murdered in this house along with her husband, Elias. The letter began, My darling Margaret. Cora read. She read for an hour, maybe 2. She lost the sense of time. The fire burned low. She did not get up to feed it. Her eyes adjusted. She read by what light there was. She read about a girl named Adelaide who had grown up 2 blocks away from a girl named Margaret on Beacon Hill in Boston. She read about 2 girls who had decided at 15 that they were going to be nurses. She read about Massachusetts General Hospital, where they had trained together, where they had slept in the same dormitory, where they had held each other through the cholera year of '54. She read about 2 young Harvard medical students who had eaten supper with them on Sundays. Elias Whitmore, dark-haired, quiet kind. Ambrose Thackeray, fair-haired, brilliant, charming. Both of them sweet on Adelaide. Adelaide laughing about it in the letters. Adelaide writing, Dear God, Margaret, I cannot decide. Elias is good, and Ambrose is clever, and I want a man who is both, and there is no such creature in the state of Massachusetts. She read about the night in the spring of 1856 when Adelaide chose Elias. She read about Ambrose Thackeray's reaction. She read the letter dated 3 weeks after the engagement, in which Adelaide wrote Margaret, He came to my window. He stood under it for an hour. He did not call up. He just stood. When I finally went down, he said one thing. He said, You will be sorry. He said, You will be sorry to the end of your life and to the end of your children's lives. Then he walked away. Margaret, I have not slept for 3 nights. Margaret, what kind of man says such a thing? Cora's hand was shaking. She kept reading. She read about the Harvard examination scandal in the summer of '56, about a young Ambrose Thackeray weeks away from graduating, caught copying from another student's anatomy paper, suspended for one term, never readmitted, never granted his MD. The letter said he had blamed Elias, who had been the proctor in the examination hall that day. Elias, who had not turned him in. Elias, who had simply written down what he had seen on the proctor's report, because that was what a proctor was required to do. Ambrose had screamed at Elias in the quad. Adelaide had heard about it through the laundry maid. The laundry maid had heard about it through the porter. The porter had said it was the worst thing he had ever seen a young gentleman do. Then Ambrose had left Boston for 17 years. He had reappeared in Silver Hollow, Colorado in 1873, 2 years before Elias and Adelaide and the three boys had come west. He had set up as the town's doctor. He had no license. No one had asked. The frontier did not ask. He had bought the bank. He had bought the newspaper. He had bought the post office. He had bought slowly, year by year, every councilman and judge in Clear Creek County. And when the Whitmores had arrived in '75, and Elias had struck silver on Black Pine Ridge in '76, Ambrose Thackeray had waited. He had waited 2 years. In November of '78, 8 months before Holt turned 22, 4 men en masse had come up Black Pine Ridge in the night and killed Elias Whitmore in his own bedroom and killed Adelaide Whitmore in the hallway as she had run toward the boys' rooms with a fireplace poker in her hand. The three sons had survived. Holt at 21, Briggs at 19, Tate at 17. They had been in the bunkhouse out back. They had heard the shots. They had come running with rifles. They had killed 2 of the 4 masked men. The other 2 had escaped down the mountain in the dark. Ambrose Thackeray, in town the next morning, had hosted the memorial service. He had wept publicly. He had sent a wreath. Adelaide's last letter to Margaret, dated 4 days before her death, ended with this sentence. Margaret, he is going to do something. I do not know what. I have written down everything I remember from Boston, names, dates, the examination, the thing he said under my window. I am sending the second copy to you. Keep it safe. If anything happens to me, take it to a newspaper. Not in Colorado, in Boston, the Herald or the Globe. They will believe you. We trained at Mass General for 11 years between us. People know our names, Margaret promised me, if anything happens. Cora put the letter down. She sat on the floor of the bedroom with her back against the leather trunk. The fire was almost out. She did not feed it. She did not move. Because Margaret Pendleton had received that letter. Margaret Pendleton had read it. Margaret Pendleton had heard a week later that her best friend had been murdered. Margaret Pendleton had not gone to a newspaper. Margaret Pendleton had hidden the letters at the bottom of a trunk under a false board and gone on with her quiet hospital life because Margaret Pendleton was the mother of an 8-year-old girl, and Margaret Pendleton was afraid. And 2 years later, in 1880, the hospital where Margaret Pendleton worked had burned to the ground with Margaret Pendleton inside it. And 6 years after that, Ambrose Thackeray had begun to wait again. And 2 years after that, when Margaret's daughter Cora had reached marrying age, when Cora had taken her mother's trunk out of her stepfather's attic to begin sorting it, when Cora had begun asking questions about Adelaide Whitmore, whose name she had heard her mother whisper twice in fever the year before she died, then Ambrose Thackeray had moved. He had spoken to her stepfather. He had paid off her stepfather's debts in a single afternoon. He had suggested casually that he had a friend in Boston who placed bride advertisements for established gentlemen in the Colorado Territory. He had handed Reginald Marsh a slip of paper with an address. He had said the gentleman in question was a Mr. Holt Whitmore. He had said he believed Mr. Whitmore would be a fine match for a quiet girl with medical training. He had said the train fare and trousseau would be covered. Reginald Marsh had taken the bait. Reginald Marsh had thought he was simply unloading his troublesome stepdaughter for cash. Reginald Marsh had not known he was sending her to her death. Or perhaps he had known. Cora's hand closed around the corner of her mother's letter and crushed it. She sat in the dark for a long time. The fire went out. The cold came back into the room. Downstairs, the clock chimed 11. There was a soft knock at the door. Cora said Tate's voice. Through the wood, "Are you all right?" Cora did not answer. Cora. She got up, slowly. Her knees hurt. Her back hurt. The letters were spread across the floor around her like fallen leaves. She opened the door. Tate was standing in the hall with 2 cups of something steaming. Coffee, maybe. Nay. She could not tell. His face changed when he saw hers. What he said. She handed him the topmost letter. He read it, standing in the doorway. He read it twice. He looked up. "What is this?" he said. "It's your mother," Cora said. "Writing to my mother, 4 days before your mother died." Tate's face did not change. His face did not need to change. The hand holding the letter began to shake. "Get Briggs," Cora said. "Get Holt. Bring them up here. They need to see this, all of it, tonight." Tate said, "Yes, ma'am." He went. His boots on the stairs were not quiet. She heard them go down. She heard them stop in the front parlor. She heard low voices. She heard Holt's voice rise once sharply, only once, only on one word. "Mama." She heard the boots come back up, 3 pairs this time. She stood in the doorway with the letter in her hand. The bedroom behind her was lit only by the moon through the window, and the moon was very bright on the snow, and the snow was very white on the mountain, and somewhere 4 miles down at the bottom of the mountain, in a warm office above a bank in Silver Hollow Drive, Ambrose Thackeray was finishing his evening brandy and writing in his black leather ledger with a gold-nibbed pen, and he did not yet know that the girl he had sent up to die had just untied a black silk ribbon 30 years old. He did not yet know that she could read. He did not yet know that her mother had taught her. He did not yet know what was coming down his mountain. Briggs reached the top of the stairs first. His eyes found hers. He said, "Show me." She showed him. The 3 Whitmore brothers stood in the small bedroom at the top of the Black Pine Ridge house, and they read their mother's letters out loud one by one, taking turns voice by voice. Tate read first because Tate read aloud the best. Briggs read second because Briggs needed to read a second, needed to hear the words come out of his own mouth, needed to feel them in his own throat. Holt read last because Holt could not stand for very long with his shoulder, and because Holt was the oldest, and because Holt had been the one to hold his mother in the hallway as she died, and the reading would cost him the most, and he insisted on paying it last. They read until 2 in the morning. They read every letter. When they were finished, none of them spoke for a long time. Then Holt looked at Cora. He said, "My mother was your mother's friend." Cora said, "Yes." He said, "My mother was murdered because of what she knew." Cora said, "Yes." He said, "Your mother was murdered 2 years later because she knew the same thing." Cora said, "Yes." He said, "And he sent you up this mountain to be the third." Cora said, "Yes." A pause. Holt said, "Not in this lifetime." The 3 brothers looked at each other. A look passed between them that Cora did not entirely understand. A look 30 years in the making. A look that had been waiting for somebody to bring the second copy of Adelaide Whitmore's letter down out of a Boston attic and put it on a Colorado bedroom floor. Briggs said, "We ride down." Holt said, "Not yet." Briggs said he sent a card with poison on it, Holt. He sent it tonight. He thinks we are scared. He thinks she is dying. He thinks he has time. Holt said, "Which is why we wait." Tate said, "How long?" Holt said, "Until Christmas Eve." Cora said, "Why Christmas Eve?" Holt looked at her. Because he said Christmas Eve is the night Ambrose Thackeray throws the Silver Hollow Christmas dinner at the Bonanza Hotel. Every important man in town is there. Every councilman, every judge, every sheriff, every newspaper man from as far as Denver. He hosts it. He pays for it. He gives the toast. 200 guests every year in one room in one place with their wives and their daughters sober for the first part of the evening, all of them watching him stand up and call himself a friend of this town. Holt's voice was quiet. The eyes had gone the color of dark stone. He said, "Cora, will you do something for me?" Cora said yes. He said, "I have not asked you what." Cora said, I do not need you to ask. I will do it. Holt nodded. He said, on Christmas Eve, 10 days from now, I would like you to walk into the Bonanza Hotel ballroom on my arm, wearing your red coat, with your mother's letters in your bag, and I would like you in front of 200 people to read them out loud. Cora did not blink. She said yes. Briggs said, Christ Holt. Tate said he will try to kill her before then. Holt said he will try. Cora said, then we make sure he cannot. The three brothers looked at her. Holt said quietly, Cora Pendleton. She said yes. He said, I am very glad you walked up our mountain. She said, so am I. Outside the window, far down the slope of Black Pine Ridge, a single lantern was moving back into the town of Silver Hollow. It moved past the post office. It moved past the bank. It moved past the lit upstairs window of Dr. Ambrose Thackeray's office, where a fair-haired man of 58 years stood with a brandy in his hand and watched it come. The lantern stopped under his window. The man with the lantern looked up. Ambrose Thackeray opened the window. He said, well. Ezekiel on the mule looked up at him. His face was pale in the lantern light. Ezekiel said, she's there, sir. She's alive. I didn't see her with my own eyes, but she's there. The youngest one would not let me pass the doorway. He was holding back something. There was a fire lit in the parlor that hadn't been lit in 2 years. Ambrose Thackeray smiled. The smile did not reach his eyes. He said, thank you, Ezekiel. Go home. Sleep well. Ezekiel went. Ambrose Thackeray closed the window. He turned and walked back to his desk. He opened the bottom drawer. He took out a black leather ledger. He took out a gold-nibbed pen. He turned to a fresh page. He wrote in his careful, elegant hand the date, December 14th, 1888. Then he wrote beneath it one line. The Pendleton girl has not died yet. Accelerate. He closed the ledger. He finished his brandy. He smiled at his own reflection in the dark window above the snow-covered street of Silver Hollow, Colorado. He did not yet know that 4 miles up the mountain in a small bedroom at the top of the Black Pine Ridge house, 3 brothers and a girl from Boston were reading the last letter in the packet. The letter Adelaide Whitmore had never sent, the one dated only 2 hours before her death, the one she had hidden in the lining of her own dress, and that Holt Whitmore, at the age of 21, had cut out of the lining with a hunting knife at his mother's funeral and never read. He had never been able to read it. He had carried it folded in his wallet for 10 years and never been able to read it. Tonight, with Cora Pendleton sitting on the floor beside him, with her hand on his good wrist, he finally opened it. He read it out loud. It said, my dear sons, if you are reading this, I am gone. I love you, I love you, I love you. Do not avenge me with violence. Avenge me with the truth. The truth has a longer reach than any bullet. Find a way, find a witness, find a room full of people who cannot pretend they did not hear. Then speak, and do not be afraid. Your father and I will be in that room with you when you do. Holt's voice did not break until the last sentence. When it broke, Cora took the letter out of his good hand and finished it for him. She read the last 2 lines herself in the steady voice that had not shaken in 8 years. Your father and I will be in that room with you when you do. I love you, my brave boys. Mama. The fire popped. Outside on Black Pine Ridge, the snow began to fall again. Soft this time. Steady. The kind of snow that lasts a week. 10 days until Christmas Eve. 10 days until a girl in a red coat walked into a ballroom in Silver Hollow with a packet of letters tied with a black silk ribbon and the truth her 2 mothers had paid for with their lives. 10 days. The mountain held its breath. The next 10 days did not feel like 10 days. They felt like one long held breath. Snow fell every night and stopped every morning. The mountain wore a fresh white skin by dawn, and the brothers wore the same coats they had worn the day before and the day before that, and the cabin smelled of pine smoke and gun oil and bread, and Cora Pendleton learned what it was to live inside a fortress. Because the brothers turned the house into one. Briggs nailed shutters across every ground floor window. Tate ran a wire from the back porch to the bunkhouse so that a man pulled at one end would ring a bell at the other. Holt, who was not yet supposed to be on his feet, sat at the kitchen table cleaning rifles in his lap with one good arm and one slinged one. Cora cleaned the wounds on his shoulder every morning and every evening and watched the pink come back into the edges and tried not to watch his eyes when she changed the bandage. She did not always succeed. She told herself she did not have time for that, except that she did have time because there were 9 days and then 8 and then 7, and in the spaces between cleaning rifles and boiling water and burning her tongue on bad coffee, she had time to notice things she had no business noticing. She noticed that Holt's mouth went soft on one side when he was tired. She noticed that he had a freckle on the back of his left hand shaped like a half moon. She noticed that when he caught her looking at him, he did not look away, which was a problem, because the man was not even her husband, because the man had never written her a letter, because somewhere 4 miles down the mountain was a man with a black ledger who had paid for her mother's death, and a girl with any sense in her head would be thinking about that man and not about the freckle on the back of a wounded rancher's hand. She told herself this every night. Every morning she failed to remember it. On the third day, Briggs rode down to Silver Hollow alone. He went on foot the last half-mile so the horse would not be recognized at the livery. He went into the general store with his hat low. He bought ammunition, 2 pounds of coffee, a pound of sugar, and one item nobody in the store thought twice about: a dress. A long-sleeved gown of midnight blue silk with cream lace at the throat and a row of pearl buttons down the back. It was the most expensive thing in the store. The shopkeeper's wife had ordered it from St. Louis on speculation and had not been able to sell it for 2 years because no woman in Silver Hollow had the figure for it in the price. Briggs bought it. He paid in silver coin. He carried it home wrapped in brown paper and laid it on the parlor table without a word. Cora came down the stairs that evening and saw it and stopped on the third step from the bottom. What she said: Briggs said you cannot walk into the Bonanza Hotel ballroom in a red wool coat from Boston. He would see you coming up the street. He would have men at the door. Cora said so. Briggs said, so you walk in like a Denver lady. You walk in late. You walk in as the wife of a mining man we are inventing. We give you a different name at the door. You are inside before he knows. Cora touched the silk. She had never worn silk in her life. She said, this is too much money. Briggs said, nothing is too much money for this. Get used to that. He walked out. Tate, leaning in the kitchen doorway, said he means it. Don't argue with him. She didn't argue. She carried the dress upstairs. She did not try it on, not yet. She hung it on the back of the door. She looked at it for a long time. She thought about a girl named Adelaide standing in a Boston laundry in 1854, laughing about a boy named Elias. And she thought about a girl named Margaret on Beacon Hill in 1854, holding Adelaide's hand under a windowsill. And she thought about the wedding gown her stepfather had laid out on her bed in Boston 2 months ago that she had run from, and she thought very quietly that she had not run from a wedding gown after all. She had run toward this dress. She just had not known it. On the 5th day, Holt asked her to walk with him. Not far. The brothers would not let either of them go far. Briggs had drawn a perimeter at 300 yards from the cabin. Past 300 yards, a sharpshooter on the ridge above could see them. Inside 300 yards, the pines were too thick. So Holt asked her to walk to the edge of 300 yards and back. She said yes. She did not know why he had asked. He moved slowly. The sling was off, but his left arm did not want to lift past his rib. He carried a walking stick. The snow was up to her knees and up to his thigh. They moved through it like a pair of birds wading through a slow river. He did not speak for the first 10 minutes. She did not either. The forest was very still. The kind of still a forest goes when it is too cold for the birds. Snow whispered down off a branch every few minutes. A squirrel chattered far away. Otherwise, nothing. At the edge of the 300-yard line, Holt stopped. He looked at the mountain. He said, I have something to tell you, and I do not want to say it inside the house, because inside the house, my brothers can hear me, and my brothers have been hearing me my whole life, and I have already given them every word I had until I met you." She did not look at him. She looked at the mountain too. She said, "Tell me." He said, "I am not going to ask you to stay." She did not say anything. He said, "When this is over, when we walk out of the Bonanza Hotel ballroom on Christmas Eve, when whatever happens, happens, you are free to go. You came up here as a piece of mail. You came up here because a man tried to kill you in a clever way. Anything that has happened between now and then was not chosen by you. You were trapped. A trapped person cannot freely give. So I will not ask. Do you understand me?" She said, "I understand you." He said, "But I am going to tell you the truth one time, and then I am not going to say it again until you say it first, because that is how it works. Because if I say it more than once, I am pressing you, and you have been pressed enough by men." She said, "Tell me." He said, "I have not been able to look at another woman in 10 years. Not since my mother died. Not because I was loyal to a ghost, because I had nothing left to give. There was the mountain, and there was Briggs, and there was Tate, and there was the silver vein, and that was all there was room for. I thought that was all there would ever be room for." He paused. He looked at her sideways. He said, "Then a Boston girl walked up out of a blizzard with my brother's blood on her hands and saved my life on my own dining table, and I have not had one quiet hour in my chest since." She closed her eyes. He said, "I am not asking. I am telling. So when we walk out of the Bonanza Hotel and you choose to go to Pennsylvania to find an aunt you have not met, you will know. And if you choose to stay, you will also know. That is the only reason I am saying this, because you should not have to guess. A woman should not have to guess." She opened her eyes. She said, "I have something to tell you too." He waited. She said, "I have spent 8 years not crying. I made myself a promise the night my mother died that I would not cry until I was somewhere safe. The first night I was in this house, I cried because your brother had washed his hands before he touched me." Holt did not move. She said, "I do not know what that means yet. I want to know what it means. I would like time to know what it means. But if you are asking me whether I will be on a train to Pennsylvania on the 27th of December, the answer is no." He turned his head and looked at her. She turned her head and looked at him. The snow had started again very softly between them. He said, "Cora Pendleton." She said, "Holt Whitmore." He said, "May I?" She said, "May you what?" He said, "May I take your hand, just your hand, for 1 minute inside my pocket, where it is warm, where my mother's letter has been folded for the last 10 years, and where it does not need to be folded anymore." She put her hand inside his coat pocket. His good hand closed around hers. His pocket was warm. Inside his pocket was an old folded letter, the corners soft from being touched 1,000 times, and her hand fit beside it without crowding. They stood there for a minute, maybe two. Then they walked back. That night the wind dropped. The temperature fell to 20 below. Briggs on the porch with a rifle across his knees saw a single set of fresh tracks at the tree line that had not been there at dusk. Boot tracks. One man. Not deep enough for a heavy man, not light enough for a small one. The tracks came up to within 70 yards of the cabin and stopped behind a pine and then went back down the mountain. Briggs followed them at dawn. He came back at mid-morning with his jaw set. He said, "Kane Crawford." Tate said, "Bones, up here." Briggs said, "Bones up here." Day before yesterday at the latest. He came up. He looked. He did not shoot. He went home. Holt said he is scouting. Briggs said he is waiting for orders. Tate said he is waiting for Christmas Eve. Holt said he is waiting for us to leave the house. A silence. Cora said, "Then we leave the house only once." The three brothers looked at her. She said, "We leave the house only on the night of the dinner. We do not go down the day before. We do not go down the day of for any other reason. We go down once. We come back once. We make him put all of his chips on one night." Briggs said it is the right play. Holt said it is the only play. Tate said it is the play that gets one of us killed. Holt said yes. Nobody disagreed with that. On the sixth day, Briggs came back from town with a key, a small brass thing. He laid it on the kitchen table beside the coffee pot. He did not sit. He had not taken off his coat. He said $40 to the chambermaid at the Bonanza, Maeve Donovan. She cleans Thackeray's upstairs office every Wednesday morning. She has been cleaning it for 6 years. She does not like him. She does not like him for reasons she did not explain and I did not ask. Tate looked up from his coffee. Briggs said the ledger sits in the bottom drawer of his writing desk. Bottom left drawer. She has seen it. She has seen him take it out. She has seen him put it back. She says he writes in it every night. She says he kisses the gold seal on the spine when he closes it. Her word, not mine. Tate said, I'll go in through the kitchen. Briggs said, you'll go in through the kitchen. Tate said, delivery man's apron. Briggs said, delivery man's apron. Backstairs, second floor, third door on the left. You'll have 8 minutes, maybe 10. Toast starts at 6:15. You go in at 5:30. Tate said, what if the desk is locked? Briggs said, she said it isn't. He's an arrogant man. Arrogant men don't lock things in their own building. Holt, sitting at the head of the table, said nothing. Holt looked at the key on the table for a long time. The key looked back at him. He said, finally, this is the part that gets one of us killed. Briggs said, probably me. Tate said, probably me. Holt said, probably me. Cora said, nobody if we are careful. The three brothers looked at her. She said, we have been careful for 10 days. We will be careful for one more night. Now somebody pour me coffee. Tate poured her coffee. On the 7th day, Tate sat with Cora in the kitchen and they wrote out the order of the letters. 23 letters in the packet. They could not read all 23 out loud at the dinner. They would have 10 minutes at most before someone moved. They had to pick the 4 that hit hardest. Cora chose the topmost letter, June 14th, 78. The 4 months out warning. Adelaide writing to Margaret, I am afraid he will come this winter. Tate chose the one about the window. Spring 56, Adelaide writing about a young Ambrose standing under her sash for an hour and saying, you will be sorry to the end of your life and to the end of your children's lives. Briggs walked in from the porch and chose the one about the Harvard examination. Summer 56, the cheating, the proctor's report, the 17-year exile. He chose it because he said every man in that ballroom was going to be a man who valued his reputation more than his life. And every man in that ballroom was going to hear that Ambrose Thackeray had been thrown out of Harvard for copying off another man's paper. And every man in that ballroom was going to remember that for the rest of his life, whatever else happened. Holt walked in from the parlor and chose the last one. The letter Adelaide had hidden in her dress, the one she had never sent, the one Holt had cut from the lining at her funeral with a hunting knife and carried in his wallet for 10 years, and only opened the night Cora had untied the ribbon. The one that said, your father and I will be in that room with you when you do. Cora looked at him when he chose it. She said, are you sure? He said she is going to be in that room, she and your mother both. I want them to hear themselves. Cora touched his good hand. She said yes. On the 9th day, the day before Christmas Eve, they rehearsed. In the parlor, the 3 brothers and Cora in a row of empty chairs to stand in for the 200 guests of Silver Hollow. They walked through it twice, then 3 times, then 4. Cora at the doorway in her midnight blue dress, Holt on her arm, Briggs flanking on the right side, Tate sliding along the wall toward the side exits, then Cora stepping forward at the moment of the toast, then Cora opening her bag, then Cora's voice, the one she had used at Mass General to make a man hold still, while she set his shoulder, the voice that did not shake, calling out one sentence. Ladies and gentlemen of Silver Hollow, my name is Cora Pendleton. My mother was murdered. The man who paid for it is in this room, and I have proof. They rehearsed it 4 times. The 4th time, Cora got to the word proof and stopped. She did not stop on purpose. Her throat closed. Tate brought her water. She drank it. She said, I'm fine. Holt said, you are not fine. She said, I will be. He said, you will be. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said something none of them had said out loud yet. He said, Cora, Whatever happens tomorrow night, whatever happens, I want you to know one thing. You do not have to be brave for us. We have been brave for 30 years. You do not owe us bravery. You owe us nothing. If tomorrow night you stand in that doorway and you cannot say the words, we will say them for you. Briggs will say them. I will say them. Tate will say them. The letters will be read. You can stand in the back of the room and you can watch. You do not have to be the one. Do you hear me? Cora said, I hear you. He said, do you believe me? She said, yes. He said, then say it again. With your shoulders down, without holding your breath, the way a woman says her own name, the way your mother said her own name when she put it on a marriage certificate in 1865. Cora set down the water. She breathed in. She breathed out. She said, ladies and gentlemen of Silver Hollow, my name is Cora Pendleton. My mother was murdered. The man who paid for it is in this room, and I have proof. Briggs from the back of the parlor said, that's it. Tate from the side wall said, that's it. Holt in front of her did not say anything for a second. Then he said quietly, that is the voice my mother used to use. Cora's eyes filled. She did not wipe them. She said, thank you. He said, thank you. Christmas Eve. 4 in the afternoon, the light was already low, the wagon was hitched. Briggs drove, Tate rode flanker on a roan mare half a mile ahead with a Winchester across his saddle. Holt sat beside Cora on the wagon bench in a clean black wool coat that had been his father's. His good arm was around her shoulders. His bad arm hung at his side. Under the bench was a packet of 23 letters in a leather bag. Inside the leather bag was a small Derringer Cora did not yet know how to fire, but Briggs had told her how to point. Down the mountain, snow on the trail, pines black against white, the horse's breath steaming, the wagon wheels squeaking against the cold steel. They came into Silver Hollow at 6 in the evening. The town was lit. Lanterns hung along the boardwalks. A pine wreath on the door of every store. The Bonanza Hotel at the end of the main street, 3 stories of yellow brick. Every window lit a long line of carriages out front. Men in black wool coats and women in furs stepping down onto the carpet runners that had been rolled out across the snow. Briggs drove the wagon around the back. They tied it at the livery on 6th Street. Cora stepped out of the wagon in the midnight blue dress with her red wool coat over it, hood up and Holt's good arm under hers. The pearl buttons down the back of the dress glowed in the lantern light. Briggs walked 4 paces behind. Tate had already gone in through the kitchen entrance 10 minutes earlier, pretending to be a delivery man from the bakery. They walked up the front steps of the Bonanza Hotel. A young man in a hotel coat checked names at the door. Holt said Mr. and Mrs. James Holloway, of Denver. Mining concern. Dr. Thackeray's office sent a confirmation last week. The young man checked his list. Cora's heart hit her ribs once. Twice the young man said, yes, sir. Welcome, the ballroom is upstairs and to the right. They walked in. The ballroom of the Bonanza Hotel was enormous. 200 people, maybe 250. A string quartet in the corner playing a Christmas carol, Cora half knew. Long tables along the walls with crystal decanters and silver platters and red candles. A great pine tree at the far end of the room hung with gold ribbon. A small raised platform in front of the tree with a wooden lectern. At the lectern, accepting a glass of brandy from a passing waiter, stood Dr. Ambrose Thackeray. Cora saw him. She had never seen him before. She had seen twice in her life an etching of him in a Harvard yearbook that her mother had owned. The etching was 32 years old. The face in front of her now was older. The hair was white where it had been gold. The cheeks were heavier. The mouth was the same. The eyes were the same. The eyes turned. The eyes found a woman in a hooded red coat across the room. The eyes narrowed for a half second. Because a red coat and a Boston cut had no business at a Silver Hollow Christmas dinner. Because the woman's face was hidden in shadow. Because the man beside her wore a sling. The eyes registered all 3 things at once, and the brain refused to assemble them. Not yet. Not in his own ballroom. Not on his night. Not on the night he had given a toast for 15 straight years to a room full of men who owed him money. The brain told the eyes that the red coat was a Denver lady's coat, and the sling was a riding injury, and the night was Christmas Eve, and there was nothing to assemble. The eyes moved on. They would come back. He did not know that yet. Cora let out a breath she had not been holding. Holt squeezed her arm. Briggs slid past them along the wall and disappeared toward the kitchen door. Tate's face appeared briefly in a window beside the side exit and disappeared again. The string quartet finished the carol. A small round of applause. Ambrose Thackeray tapped a silver spoon against a crystal glass. The room quieted. He smiled the smile of a man who had been smiling at this room for 15 years. He began his toast. He talked about the year. He talked about the silver yield. He talked about the new railroad coming through. He thanked the mayor. He thanked the judge. He thanked the sheriff. He thanked the women of Silver Hollow, whose grace and beauty made the frontier a civilized place. There was polite laughter at the last line. Several of the women smiled. One of the women did not. The one in the hooded red coat in the back of the room, standing beside a tall man with his arm in a sling, did not smile. Ambrose Thackeray lifted his brandy. To Silver Hollow, he said, to another year of prosperity, to friends and family, and the long, beautiful future of this town. The 200 guests lifted their glasses. 200 glasses caught the candlelight. To Silver Hollow, the room said. Cora pushed back the hood of her red coat. She stepped forward. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Her clear nurse's voice cut through the chatter the way a scalpel cuts through skin. She said, "Ladies and gentlemen of Silver Hollow, my name is Cora Pendleton. My mother was murdered. The man who paid for it is in this room, and I have proof." 200 faces turned at once. The string quartet in the middle of starting up the next carol fell apart in the rough chord and stopped. Ambrose Thackeray, with his brandy halfway to his mouth, froze. For one full second, he was simply a 60-year-old man holding a glass. Then the public face came down. He smiled. He said in the warm, chuckling voice of a country doctor, "I'm sorry, my dear who." Cora opened the leather bag. She took out the first letter. She said, "My name is Cora Pendleton. I am the daughter of Margaret Pendleton, born Margaret Coyne of Beacon Hill, Boston, who trained as a nurse at Massachusetts General Hospital from 1853 to 1857, who married Dr. William Pendleton in 1865, who gave birth to me in 1866, who died on the 14th of November, 1880, in a hospital fire that was not an accident." She did not stop. She said, "My mother was the closest friend of Adelaide Foss. Later, Adelaide Whitmore, who trained with her in the same hospital, who married Dr. Elias Whitmore of Harvard Medical College in 1856, who came west to Colorado in 1875, who was murdered with her husband in their home on Black Pine Ridge on the 4th of November, 1878. The room had gone perfectly still. She said, "Tonight I am going to read 4 letters out loud. Adelaide Whitmore wrote them to my mother over the course of 24 years. The last one she wrote 4 months before she died. The man who paid for the murder of Adelaide Whitmore and the man who paid for the murder of my mother is standing on that platform." She did not point. She did not need to. She lifted the first letter. She read. She read about a Boston laundry in 1854 and 2 girls who held hands under a windowsill. She read about a young man named Ambrose Thackeray who came to Adelaide's window in 56 and said, "You will be sorry to the end of your life and to the end of your children's lives." She read about a Harvard examination hall in the summer of 56 and a young man who was caught copying answers and suspended and never readmitted. She read about a 17-year silence in which that young man left Boston, came to Colorado, set himself up as a doctor without a license, and bought the bank, the post office, the newspaper, and the judges one by one, year by year. She read about a letter Adelaide had written 4 months before her death. "Margaret, I am afraid he will come this winter." She read about a packet of letters Adelaide had sent her best friend with the instruction, "If anything happens to me, take it to a newspaper." Not in Colorado, in Boston. She read about a hospital fire in Boston in 1880. She read about an 8-year-old girl who lost both her parents the same night. She read for 9 minutes. Nobody moved. When she came to the last letter, the one Adelaide had hidden in her dress, the one Holt had cut out at her funeral, the one she had been carrying in her own bag for 9 days, her hands were trembling, not from fear, from cold. The ballroom was very cold. The doors had been opened at the back. She did not look to see who had opened them. She read the last letter. Your father and I will be in that room with you when you do. I love you, my brave boys. Mama. She lowered the letter. The ballroom did not move. The mayor's wife, a small white-haired woman in green silk near the front, sat down very slowly on a velvet bench as though her knees had decided for her. Ambrose Thackeray smiled. He smiled. He was still smiling. The smile was a death mask now. The smile did not match the eyes. The eyes had gone the color of slate. He said, my dear, this is a fairy tale. Cora did not answer. He said, a clever fairy tale, beautifully delivered. The Whitmore boys have always been theatrical. I am sorry for your losses, truly. But what you have read are fabrications. There is no proof in any of these letters that I had anything to do with any death. They are the letters of a frightened woman writing to a friend. They are not proof of anything. Cora reached into the leather bag. She took out the last item. It was not a letter. It was a small black ledger book, bound in leather, gold nibbed pen ink across the pages. She held it up. She said, this is your ledger book, Dr. Thackeray, dated 1873 through 1888. It contains the names of every man you have paid in this county, the judges, the councilmen, the deputies, the pharmacist who delivered poison to the Whitmore house 10 nights ago at your instruction, the 2 men in masks you paid in 1878 to kill Elias and Adelaide Whitmore, the $400 you paid an arsonist in Boston in 1880 to set fire to Massachusetts General Hospital on a night when my mother was on shift, the $300 you paid my stepfather 6 weeks ago to put me on a train to Silver Hollow. It is all here, in your own handwriting. She had not had this ledger an hour ago. Tate had it. Tate, who had slipped in through the kitchen at 5:30. Tate, who had gone up the back stairs of the Bonanza Hotel in a delivery man's apron. Tate, who had used the brass key Briggs had paid the chambermaid $40 for the week before, and who had walked into Ambrose Thackeray's private office on the second floor of the Bonanza, and who had taken the black ledger out of the bottom left drawer of Ambrose Thackeray's writing desk, while Ambrose Thackeray was downstairs giving the toast he had given every Christmas Eve for 15 years. Tate had slipped the ledger into Cora's bag at 6:15. She had been holding it ever since. Ambrose Thackeray's mouth opened. For the first time, the smile cracked. He said, that is a forgery. Cora said, open the inside cover. Someone in the front row, a man who must have been the bank president, was already moving. He climbed onto the platform. He took the ledger from her hand. He opened the inside cover. He read what was written there. His face went the color of paper. Cora said, you wrote your initials on the inside cover. A.T.A.M. Ambrose Thomas Morrow Thackeray. Bank seal underneath, your private seal. Nobody else has it. You used it on every loan document you ever signed in this town. Every man in this room with a mortgage has seen that seal. Every man in this room with a mortgage knows that handwriting. The man with the ledger turned slowly toward Ambrose Thackeray. He said, Ambrose. Ambrose Thackeray did not answer him. A second man stepped forward from the side of the platform. Older, white-haired, wearing a black wool suit and a small gold star pinned to his lapel. Cora had been told who he was that morning by Holt. His name was Judge Hiram Vance. He had been on Thackeray's payroll for 9 years. He was also, in his younger years in the 1860s, a close friend of a Boston surgeon named William Pendleton. He had been sober for 3 days. He had asked Briggs through a coded note left under a stone behind the Methodist church the previous Tuesday for the chance to do one decent thing before he died. He stepped to the lectern now. He looked down at the ledger in the bank president's hand. He said loud enough for the room, I have seen that handwriting on 3 death certificates this past year. 2 thrown miners and a saloon woman, each one signed by Ambrose Thackeray as cause of death pneumonia. Each one paid out of his discretionary fund. I did not ask questions then. I should have. I am asking them now. He turned to Ambrose Thackeray. He said, Ambrose, step down from the platform. Ambrose Thackeray reached inside his coat. It was the only mistake of his life. Because he had thought he was reaching for a small Derringer pistol he had carried for 20 years in a chest holster. Except that the holster was empty. Because Tate in the upstairs office, while taking the ledger, had also taken the gun. Because Tate, who read Whitman and washed his hands, was not only a reader of Whitman and a washer of hands. Ambrose Thackeray's fingers closed on nothing. Judge Vance, who was the only man in the room close enough, took him by the wrist. Briggs, who had come along the back wall, took him by the other wrist. Holt, who had crossed the entire ballroom without anyone realizing he was crossing it, set his good hand flat against Ambrose Thackeray's chest and held him in place. The sheriff, a man named Doyle, who had been on Thackeray's payroll for 6 years, and who Cora had not been sure would come down on the right side, looked at the ledger. He looked at the judge. He looked at the 200 faces of his town. He looked at his own wife, the mayor's wife in green silk, now standing white-faced beside the velvet bench. Sheriff Doyle took out his handcuffs. He clicked them onto Ambrose Thackeray's wrists. He said in a voice none of his deputies had heard him use in 9 years, Ambrose Thomas Morrow Thackeray, you are under arrest for the murders of Elias Whitmore, Adelaide. Whitmore, William Pendleton, Margaret Pendleton, and Lenora. You will be held in the Silver Hollow Jail until a federal marshal arrives from Denver. May God have mercy on you. I will not. The ballroom exploded, not with violence, with voices. 200 citizens of Silver Hollow who had lived under one man's quiet thumb for 15 years found their voices all at once. There was shouting. There was a woman crying. There was a man punching a wall. The mayor's wife sat down again. The string quartet, which had not moved, packed up its instruments without being asked. Ambrose Thackeray turned his head as he was being led out. He looked at Cora. He said one thing. He said, your mother chose the wrong man. Cora looked at him. She said no. She chose the right one, and so did I. She did not look at Holt when she said it. She did not need to, because Holt was already looking at her. 3 weeks later, snow was melting on the lower slopes. The mountain pines dripped. Cora Pendleton stood on the porch of the Black Pine Ridge house in her red wool coat over a calico work dress and watched a single rider come up the trail. A man on a chestnut mare, a federal marshal from Denver. He had a leather portfolio across his saddle. Inside the portfolio were the final papers. Ambrose Thackeray had been moved to a federal cell in Denver 6 days ago. He had not yet been hanged. He would be hanged in May after a trial that would last 12 days, that would draw newspapermen from as far as New York, that would be read by Cora Pendleton beside a fire in this same house, with a man's good hand resting on her shoulder. But that was a story for May. Tonight, the marshal had come for one signature. He had come because Reginald Marsh, the stepfather, had died of a heart attack in Boston 2 weeks ago. He had left by way of a letter he had not had time to send, in a packet on his attic shelf, the address of one Miss Eleanor Coyne of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, the younger sister of Cora's mother, Margaret, and Aunt Cora had not known existed. Eleanor Coyne had wired Cora the morning after the federal marshal had left Boston with the papers. The wire said, "Oh, child, come home. I have a house. I have a name for you. I have your mother's portrait. I will not let you out of my sight for as long as I live." Cora had read the wire. She had folded it. She had not answered it. She had waited 3 days. On the 4th day, Holt had found her standing in the kitchen with the wire in her hand. He had said, "Have you decided?" She had said, "I have decided." He had said, "I will not ask you what." She had said, "I know." He had said, "I will hitch the wagon if you tell me to." She had said, "I am not telling you to." He had not said anything. She had said, "But I am going to Lancaster once, in May, after the trial, to meet her, to see my mother's portrait, to learn the rest of who I am." He had said yes. She had said, "And then I am coming home." He had not said anything for a long moment. Then he had said in a voice that was not quite steady, "Home." She had said home. That had been a week ago. Now she stood on the porch. The marshal dismounted. He tied his mare. He climbed the porch steps. He took off his hat. He pulled the portfolio from under his arm. He said, "Miss Pendleton." She said, "Marshal." He said, "I need a signature on the federal complaint. Then I need one more. The Whitmore brothers have asked me to record an affidavit. The affidavit concerns property held in trust on Black Pine Ridge, specifically a 1/4 share of the Black Pine claim and 1/2 ownership of a house on this site, both designated by the brothers Holt Briggs and Tate Whitmore, to be transferred to one Cora Pendleton, currently of Black Pine Ridge, formerly of Boston, Massachusetts, in recognition of services rendered to the family during a winter of considerable difficulty." She looked at him. She said, "A 1/4 share." He said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "Of a silver mine." He said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "In my name." He said, "In your name." Free and clear, no conditions, no requirement of marriage, no requirement of residence. The brothers were explicit about all of those points. They wanted understood that the share is yours regardless of any decision you make about any other matter in your life, including the matter of whether you go to Pennsylvania, including the matter of whether you stay, including the eldest one specified the matter of whether you ever speak to him again. "The share is yours. Sign here, miss." She took the pen. Her hand did not shake. She signed, "Cora Pendleton." The signature came out steady on the first try. The marshal blotted the ink. He put away the portfolio. He looked at her for a moment. He said, "Miss Pendleton." She said, "Yes, Marshal." He said, "I have ridden up from Denver 4 times this month, once to take that man into custody, once to pick up the ledger, once to interview Judge Vance, and now once for this. I will tell you something I have not told him. I have read every word of that ledger. The cleanest moment in all of it, the only clean moment, ma'am, was when you stood up in that ballroom and read your mother's name out loud." Her eyes went hot. She said, "Thank you, Marshal." He said, "Thank you, Miss Pendleton, for doing what we should have done a decade ago." He put on his hat. He went down the steps. He mounted his mare. He went down the mountain. Cora stood on the porch a long time. Behind her, the door opened. Footsteps, boots on wood, long stride. A coat was placed around her shoulders, a heavier one than the wool, buffalo hide, warm from inside the house. She did not turn around. Holt's good hand came to rest on her shoulder. He said, "You signed." She said, "I signed." He said, "A 1/4 share." She said, "A 1/4 share." He said, "My brothers will spoil you." She said, "They have already started." He said, "Cora." She said, "Holt." He said, "Are you cold?" She said, "No." He said, "Are you tired?" She said, "No." He said, "Are you afraid?" She said, "No." He said, "Are you home?" A long pause. The mountain very still. The pines dripping. The sky very clear. The air smelling of pine smoke from a chimney and clean snow and the leather of an old buffalo coat, and somewhere far off, very faint, a hawk crying. She said, "I am home." He turned her to face him. He did not kiss her. Not yet. He simply set his forehead against hers and he closed his eyes and he stood there. Inside the house, Tate was reading Whitman aloud to nobody in particular in the parlor. Briggs was in the kitchen burning a pan of bacon and swearing at it. The fire in the great stone hearth was popping. In a small bedroom upstairs, in a leather trunk in the corner, 23 letters tied with a black silk ribbon lay folded one last time in the false bottom where they belonged. They had done their work. They could rest. And somewhere beyond the porch, beyond the pines, beyond Silver Hollow, and the long road back to Boston, Cora thought of 2 women, Margaret Pendleton in her nurse's apron, Adelaide Whitmore in her wedding dress, friends since they were 15, mothers of children they had not lived to see grown. She thought of them on a porch in Colorado in the spring thaw of 1889, watching a girl who had walked 4 miles up a mountain in a blizzard and had not died. She liked to think they were smiling. She liked to think they had been waiting a long time. Cora Pendleton did not stay on the mountain because she had to. She stayed because she had finally learned that home is not the place you cannot leave. Home is the place you choose to return to.